Okay, I think we're on. Super. Thank you so much. Appreciate your help, Sean. I appreciate that. Again, my name is Mark Entrekin, and I am honored to be here. You are in a great location. The people that you're meeting tonight, people that I am meeting tonight, all of you. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited about it, and I hope we can share a lot of information about what we do with Agile, Scrum, how we take it forward, some Kanban, how we take it forward to create success, even though we're working with a lot of rules, a lot of guidelines, and many of those rules and guidelines are not necessarily clear to everyone involved. Am I right? Reality-focused dynamics, creating solutions one reality at a time. That could be an iteration. Each reality could be an iteration of what we're doing, what we're accomplishing, where we want to be. What are your realities? We'll talk about that tonight as we talk more and more about where we're going, where we're building. This is a little about me. Cute pictures. Of course, as we look at guidelines. How long ago was that picture taken? Is there a rule behind that? Maybe I should give me a new picture. Update that picture a little bit. I have a bachelor's degree in organizational management, bachelor's degree in business information systems. All these certifications are awesome to have. And Toastmasters. Anyone else here in Toastmasters? Thank you. Awesome organization. If you haven't looked into Toastmasters, toastmasters.org, I would suggest it. It will help you in each of your meetings. Every time you go to a retrospective, the ability to speak to others about what's going on, it will be very helpful in helping each of us be able to be more clear in what we do. Company, I'm also an Agile instructor at DeVry University, awesome university. If you ever want to take courses, let me know. We can get you in. I've been in meetings, head of meetings, organizations for quite a while. It's a lot of fun. They also are not Agile oriented. So bringing this forward is very beneficial. As I say that, let me also thank Jamie for coming here with me tonight. Jamie, appreciate that. She's not Agile yet, but she's thinking about it. She didn't even know what Agile was before a couple of weeks ago. Anything else? I've been a commencement speaker for universities. I talked to a lot of organizations. I've seen some of you in some of the other Agile organizations here in town. But let's get down to business. Knowledge can be seen as having the right answer. Intelligence is asking the right question. And I mean this when I say that's what I'm hearing tonight from the few people I've talked with, the intelligence, bringing forward some of the issues that we see working Scrum teams, working with leadership who may not know quite what Agile is. Maybe VPs, maybe CIOs that have never taken an Agile course, a Scrum course, product owner course. We want to make sure that intelligence is spread everywhere, and then how we take that intelligence and put it into action. Tonight, I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions, and in return, I want you to ask me questions. This is truly about communication and collaboration. Each of us have that ability to adapt. Are we good with that? Now, I don't know but a few names here, so I'm sorry if I have to point. But I'd like to hear your questions. Let me ask you questions. And let's truly bring that intelligence out. So tomorrow, when we all wake up, we've learned and able to share. Is that okay? Great. Thank you much. This is a quote I saw from Simon Sinek. Everybody knows your why. What's your why? This is what Simon's talking about. For values or guiding principles to be truly effective, they have to be verbs. What's a verb? Thank you. It is an action word. It's going to be something that we're going to do or that we're doing. Something in progress. It's not integrity. It's not just the word integrity. That's too loaded. That might be a good word for a guideline. It's definitely not a rule. but it's always do the right thing. That's our verb, doing the right thing. We hear it, we get the information, we have the intelligence. What do we do next? We create a solution, right? It's not innovation. It's look at the problem from a different angle. Each of us can see something. And when we hear terms, especially agile terms, look at the Scrum board. Does everyone that looks at that board understand what they're reading? Do they know what to do next? No, I don't think so. Do you? Not at all. Articulating our values as verbs gives us a clear idea. We have a clear idea of how to act in a situation. How to act in a situation. That's the action verb, right? How do we act? What do we do? What's next? We go into acceptance criteria. What are we going to do? Those conditions of satisfaction, those are our actions. That's what we want to think about in any situation. Once we do that, let's go back to this. Agile bends rules, but not guidelines. What does that mean? Agile bends rules, but not guidelines. I'm sure all of us know the values by heart. We know the 12 principles from the Agile Manifesto. We repeat them every night before we go to bed, right? We talk about them every morning in our stand-ups, right? No, only 15 minutes. We can't do all that, but we would like to, because we need that information. If I was to come up here and talk to you about rocket scientist material, how would you feel? Would you understand me? How about if you came up here and talked to me about something I need to know, like brain surgery? My brain needs some help. Would I know? I wouldn't. So what are our rules and guidelines that we want to work with? Well, what is a rule? You can take any dictionary, probably going to come up pretty much the same thing. And we'll talk about one of a set of explicit or what? Understood. Thank you. Understood regulations or principles governing conduct within a particular activity or sphere. The rules of the game are understood, right? How many of you watch NFL? No, watch it. Why do we have to record the game? Why do we have to have that referee? I have to go with the referee calls each time. It's hard to understand. NBA right now, go Nuggets. Hope you're all from Denver. Hope the Nuggets continue on. How many times do we have to stop and review what was called on that court? It's all about understanding. We'll talk about this more in a minute about our leadership. How many of you have leadership? When I'm talking about leadership, I'm talking about your VPs, your presidents, your CIO, maybe your CEO. Truly understand what Agile is. Could any of them even explain what an iteration might be? What the sprint might be? That's what we want to talk about tonight. It's exactly where we want to go with what is a rule. All right, so we got a basic what a rule is. It's a set of explicit or understood regulations. But how many of us know those? Is it a rule if the sign on the side of the road says 55 miles an hour, that we're going to go 55 miles an hour or less? It's a rule. Maybe we do bend that rule at times. But at least what? Do we understand it? Do we have a speedometer in most of our cars that says 0 to whatever, 100 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour? We know where 55 is. We understand that. How about our leadership? Okay, then what's a guideline? We talk about a rule. What's a guideline? Again, right now I'm saying with Oxford Dictionary. If you look at any of them, probably going to be the same. A general rule, principle, or piece of advice is a guideline. Who wants to help me explain the difference? When we talk about the definition of a guideline being a general rule or principle, or even a piece of advice? How is that different? Are guidelines a little bit tougher to measure? A rule should be understood, right? We'll go through the values and the principles here in a minute. We'll talk about this more in detail. But our rules, we should be able to say, this is our rule. Please, Daniel. It will be more specific. Thank you. But a guideline can be something that we've worked with. Well, the rule said 55 miles an hour, but our guidelines show that maybe we need to go faster. Maybe our guidelines, maybe our retrospective said 55 isn't working. Maybe it should be 40. Maybe it should be 30. What are we receiving from the rule that was given to us for the value that we're creating? What do we do? Back to the intelligence. Got the knowledge, with the intelligence together. What do we do next? How can we provide value? The organization has issued guidelines for people working with prisoners. How about your Scrum team? Do you sometimes feel like a prisoner? Okay, let's be funny. Let's laugh a little bit here. Let's make this fun. Because I work Agile professionally, personally. I use Scrum and on my little list of things I need to do over the next 2 weeks. Let's have a little bit of fun in what we're doing. Let's think about this in a way that we can use it on a day-to-day basis. Any questions, any thoughts? I'd like to hear from you. As we're going into the next step, learn the rules like a pro. Now, this is written by Pablo Picasso. Learn the rules like a pro, break them like an artist. Anyone here an artist? Great, here's one. All right. Do you have certain lines you want to follow? Do you have certain colors you want to use?
It's funny you say that, because as you've been talking about guidelines and rules, I've been thinking about the rule of thirds principle that is in photography. And my dad taught me, just about everything about photography. And he says, I like to think of it as a suggestion of rules or a suggestion of thirds, because it's not a rule. It is not something that you have to follow. Is it pleasing to the eye? Yes. Is it going to fit in every situation? No. So I was thinking about that as you're talking about these rules and guidelines. So yes, loosely, there are some things I try to follow with composition, or I've started just for fun painting recently. And boy, I have made some muddy things on paper, but it's a good time. So it's a lot of experimentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's good. So learn the rules like a pro, break them like an artist. And as an artist does have some rules, have the colors, things that you're mentioning. But you want to break them to put a painting together, a statue together, so it speaks what works and then does what? It provides value. Do you ever go to an art store or art show, a gallery? What does the art at that store provide? Value. Sometimes you don't know the value going in, but we learn the value, and that's what we want to build from. Okay, then what's a principle? We talk about the Agile Manifesto. 4 values, 12 principles. What are they? We're going to go over these, each one. And I know you've been through them a million times. But let's touch on a few points. When we talk about rules, when we talk about guidelines, and how do you use it on an everyday basis? And I'm hoping some of you have some exceptions that you're going to talk about tonight. I want you to bring them up. Share them here in the room as a team. Let's get some feedback. Oxford Dictionary again. A principle is a moral rule or a strong belief that influences your, thank you, strong belief. Those principles that you have, it's a strong belief that influences your actions. Is that one reason why our leadership needs to be more involved in learning what these principles are? Now we're going to go through each one of them in a minute. But wouldn't that be helpful? Does anybody here have a car? You ever take your car to the shop, say, could you fix this? You have certain principles behind that, don't you? That he's going to take the car, she's going to take the car and change my plugs, change the tire, gonna put the same tire back on, gonna put the plugs in, they're the right ones for the car. Doesn't that kind of help? That's what we want to know. It's what we want to work with. I refuse to lie about it. It's against my principles, my beliefs. Yeah, Mike. Yeah, microphone. Sorry. All the exercise you get tonight. Thank you, Mike.
I had the question when you got over there.
Well, can come to you too. Okay. Go ahead, Mike. Thank you.
It's not even actually totally a question. It was just something I was thinking about because I work with a lot of Agile coaches with doing transformations. And I asked this question not that long ago when we were starting to work with this company. I said, hey, have you gone through the manifesto with the CEO? Have they agreed to this? Do they align on it? And they're like, oh, we've never done that. That might be a good idea.
And isn't that funny? That's a point we hear too many times. That might be a good idea. Two problems there. First, they said might. We're going to talk about might and should and some of those words later. And then an idea. Is idea an action word? An action verb? No. We must talk to leadership about this. We must have our leadership come together in understanding the own principles that they're wanting us to bring forward to help the company. We need to understand what they're asking us, right? I need that. Okay, what is a value? Value, again, through Oxford, a set of ethical beliefs, again, and preferences that determine our sense of what? Right and wrong, good and bad, works, doesn't work. Have we said retrospective before? How many here are Scrum Masters? Product owners? Product managers? Business analysts? We have a great combination of all the people for a Scrum team. Be a large Scrum team, we can break it down. Now, as I joke about that, as a Scrum Master, I had a Scrum team of 23 people one time. One team, 23 people. Talk about a fun set of meetings, to put it politely. We broke it down, but it took time. But the similarities of what we were working with did drive it toward making that one beneficial. It was tough for me in the stand-ups. We had to go a little more 15 minutes, but it was workable. And we did create solutions. But we had to determine our sense of right and wrong. Who's talking too much? Am I talking too much as a Scrum Master? But the product owner. Does our team, when you have that many people on a team, and again, that we'll go into more of this in a second, but the developers, the BAs, the DBAs, everybody involved, the testers, we had to limit our time because we had to create value in every meeting. And at the end of the meeting, we had to be able to show that value or, of course, schedule other meetings. So again, it's the beliefs of right or wrong, which can also be seen as your value stream or your value system. Anybody here work with value streams? Okay. All of you are building toward those. They're huge and it's growing. Jira value streams, they're expanding rapidly. How many of you are doing SAFe, Scaled Agile? A few of you. Okay, great. That's growing quite strong. So our question is, can we, through collaboration, to bend old rules that we develop a better understanding of the guidelines by acting on them, acting on our principles to achieve that stronger value? Take the 4 items we talked about, our rules, our guidelines, our principles, our values. How do we bring them together? How do we break rules but still remain within our guidelines to achieve the value that they're paying us to achieve? Let's go back to the manifesto. First, go with a little bit of a joke. What are you doing? I'm considering a problem from a different angle. He's upside down. Okay. That opposite thinking is a creative way to find an alternative solution to a problem. And that goes back again to that retrospective. I guess so you can realize that I think the retrospective is very important. What worked? What didn't work? What can we repair, fix, change, improve? So we want to think about. But how can we look at a different area, different level? That's what I hope you'll do tonight, and work with me in asking questions to come up with some suggestions of where we can go tomorrow. I'm sure all of you know where the manifesto is, agilemanifesto.org. Hope all of you read it a dozen times, if not more. Uncovering better ways of developing. Right now it says software. One of the words I want to put in here is solutions. Does Agile only work with software? Does anyone here use Agile outside of software? Beautiful, beautiful. That's where we need to be. It's not just programming. It's not just development. It's not just coding, but developing solutions by doing it and helping others do it. And through this, the work that we do to come to a value or come to value. Do you see a value in every one of your reviews? I don't call them demos. I hope you don't either. It's not a demo at the end of the sprint. It's a review. You will demo the work, but it's a review to get information back on what was accomplished. But I hope we also receive during our sprint, right? We're talking to our end users, talking to our test team during the sprints. What's the value that we're showing and receiving? Well, what are those 4 values? Yes, it's a little bit repetitive. You probably say, Mark, we see this all the time. But how much of it are we acting on? Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. How many of you are really working together? How many of you are happy to work together, really putting a smile on your face? When you go to your, good, Chris, good. When you go to your stand-up, do you have a positive attitude? Because we know with processes and tools, anybody here coders? I can do SQL still. Because there was a day I used to do COBOL. Anybody here know what COBOL is? All right, cool. All right. That's how I started with Fortran, then moved to COBOL. I moved up. So I've coded, but that's what we have in processes and tools. What does it do? If, then, else statements. Else if, depending how loaded it might be. That's what your processes and tools are. So there are no exceptions, except that final else if. That's what we want to work with. Interactions over the processes and tools. Do we still need decisions? Yes, we do. But that's not just the processes and tools that make those decisions for us. Anybody here working AI, artificial intelligence? Some, a little bit. More and more all the time. Doing more interaction with loads of data to make decisions. It's excellent. Working software, solutions over comprehensive documentation. Do we still need documentation? Yeah, I know you've heard this, but do we still need documentation? Absolutely. You have a question or anything?
The current industry that I'm in is medical devices or software supporting medical devices. So there's a lot of, I want to say, regulatory overhead dealing with documentation. But considering how paranoid the industry is, it's probably mostly worthwhile. There's some things that could be eliminated, but you got to get through the regulatories to sell your product. So you have
Great.
to take the necessary evils to make sure you got the right documentation to get it approved so you can sell your product. Otherwise, you got a business. So, and I've been in other companies where it wasn't that type of documentation, like, little blurbs on a page or things on the story or notes somewhere would be the documentation we had to show that the software was working, or it was really working when you gave a demo and the people you gave it to said, hey, that's what we want to buy. Right. So there really wasn't any documentation. It was convincing them that the software worked good enough for them to buy it. And then they'd worry about how they could sell it or use it in their company. So
Great points. Great. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward. Because there is that testing part that you said is part of your sprint, right? That testing must be part of the sprint, because when you have your review, all that must be tested. But now you mentioned another word, though, that's called regulations. All the regulations should be where? Conditions of satisfaction. Is there too much regulation, for example, in medical devices? Absolutely. How many conditions of satisfaction, how many of your acceptance criteria do you need in a story to cover all of the things that are covered in the regulations? Books of regulations, right? How much of that do you need? Is there a rule there? Are there some guidelines that we can follow? How do we break those rules but still stay within those guidelines? Customer collaboration, that's the biggest one. Over contract negotiation, we still have acceptance criteria. That's still a contract in a lot of ways. But it's the communication, it's all understanding what is written. There's not legal jargon in there, or better not be. There can't be. Please don't let anyone say there should not be. It's not a should. Give us, oh, shoulda. No, it must not be. We cannot allow legal jargon that doesn't make sense to everyone that reads it, including your CIO, CEO, CFO, or anyone else. You see, your directors, your VPs, they need to be able to read it also and understand it, right? Right? I'm gonna go off subject here for just a second, because how many times we go into meetings, people say, well, we want this and this and this stuff, right? And then they keep on talking. Right is a question. If somebody says, well, we want to do this at 10 o'clock and then we'll get this done, want these 3 things are on it, right? And go on. Stop. Say, wait a minute. Isn't right a question? Isn't there a guideline here somewhere, a rule that when you say right to me, you're asking me a question? That's the same thing when somebody says shoulda. What do you mean shoulda? Well, it should show this on the screen. Okay, so that's optional. If it should, that doesn't mean it must. So does the story contain acceptance criteria that is optional? Then get the should out of here. Yes, I said should, S-H-O-U-L-D. But it may not. He said it should, but it may not. Is that what your guideline says? Is that what your acceptance criteria says? Can you accept a should? I should bring you $100. Should. You think you're gonna get it? Give me some deadlines here. What's your sprint dates, right? When does this sprint end? Now you get the should out of here. Again, S-H-O-U-L-D, should out of here. I just said it right. Now think about that. But we want collaboration to find what must be there. Not extensive documentation or contract negotiation. We don't know what's there. We know how to read it and be able to read it, but we don't need. It'd be here working with IBM manuals back in the good old days. OSMVS, OSVM. We had IBM manuals that would go across, easily cover that wall right there. IBM manuals that we had to go through and read. That's not what we need. We need a user manual. Here's the screen. Here's what it shows. Must be numeric. Can be alpha. Count number may match. Where it matches. Must already exist. That's all you need. Doesn't go any farther than that. That was is it right? Responding to change over following a plan. Well, you'll see in a second, I make that word change. I change that word to improve. Who likes change? How many of your directors, VPs, how many of you in writing code enjoy change? You're 9 days into your sprint. Oh, no, we need to change that. If I'm going to change it, what do I need? Be muffled about what you're probably going to want to say to them, but what's the improvement in this change that you're talking to me about? It's not change, it's improving. We can't improve. What are we doing? That's again where that lovely word I keep saying, retrospective, comes in. And if they come in with an improvement during the sprint, what do you need to do? Measure it. Point it. Can I include this in this sprint? You should. Really joking. No, you must. You guys say yes or no. Can it be included? Do you want to hear a should at that time? No shoulda. You want to make sure that you're following the communication that's going along with that and not just a plan that somebody else says needs to be followed. Communication and collaboration. Because responding to change, you're following the plan. But you want to, on that change, you want to make sure you're responding to an improvement and that it's explained well. Okay? Any thoughts? Again, as you know from the manifesto, while there is value to items on the right, the items on the left are what we focus on more. All right, now we're going to take some time here. I'm going to get you out of here on time, but I want your questions. I want you to follow up on this. I'm going to try to go fast. If I talk too fast, slow me down. Some of you probably can tell I got a Southern accent. I just spent 2 weeks down in Southern Mississippi on the Gulf Coast, down New Orleans, Nolens. So I may have a little bit more of a twang tonight than usual. Please feel free to slow me down. Because when you're with other people, and we're going to touch on this again in a second, when you're around certain people, what do? You speak like the people you're around. How many of you heard it? You are like the 5 people that you are around the most. I have family down there, a lot of family down there. And I'll tell you for sure, they do talk pretty slow, but they one of the best people I ever seen. No, it's not that bad, but I do pick it up. So you see me, my words draw on a little bit, please ask me to repeat because I know I do talk too fast and I'll slur my words. Let me know. Make sure communication, customer collaboration. All right. Our highest priority, satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable what? Solutions. Thank you. Is it just software? Is your Scrum team just coders? No BAs, no Scrum Master, no product owner, no DBAs, no analyst? What are you working on? Your rules and your guidelines must include what? solutions, understanding, not just software. Valuable software, yes, if you're writing codes, but what else? What is the solution that what you're doing provide? Where's the value? Welcome, sorry. Sometimes I just can't talk fast. Welcome changing or improving requirements, even late in delivery, not just development, everyone on your team. You may work with QA, your Scrum teams include QA, quality assurance. They must, not should. They must include the team members that are going to be working with you to make sure it works. You have to do your unit testing, but you need someone there to do the full testing, integral testing. But you want solutions. Welcome those changing requirements, even late in delivery. Harness that change or improvement, and why? Customers benefit, customer value. That's why you're doing this, right? Who actually signs your paycheck? Who signs my paycheck? I go in and work for a company. Who signs my paycheck? It's not the VP. It's not HR. It's the customer. The people that are buying the product or service that I'm improving. When I come in and coach a team, I mentioned transition earlier, transition a team to Agile, how do they succeed? Sorry? Delivering value to the customer. Thank you. If the customer does not receive value, are they wasting their money? How many of you, I talked to a couple of you earlier about some of the companies that were hiring people, paying them high money, high dollars, but they didn't do anything. Did the customer benefit? Delivering working software or solutions? And when? Thank you. We want to be able to give it to our customer frequently. Why? So if there are improvements that come about, what can we do? Improve the solution. We want to make sure that we're doing that consistently. And we want to do it within a couple of weeks. When they wrote this, they said a couple of months. What are most sprints nowadays? 1 to 3, maybe 4 weeks per sprint, for each iteration. They were talking about months previously. But what do we want to work toward? A preference to what? The shortest time scale. Back to your car. You want to take your car in, you want to get it worked on. How soon do you want it back? As soon as possible. Thank you. When do you think your customer wants the product or service back? Yesterday. And you got the requirements coming tomorrow, but they still want it yesterday. Thank you. Yes. Microphone. Thank you.
But there is a nod to customer collaboration there, because I do have customers tell me sometimes, hey, we would love to see this feature, but we're not ready to implement that for another 6 months, probably. So love it when that happens and they don't want it yesterday. Am I right?
Why?
Yeah.
Where's your why? Where's your story?
How do
We
you
want this, we want what? We want this, but we don't want it now. Thank you. Here is a story card.
Oh, yeah,
Here is
so-
a sticky.
Yeah,
How do
so
you
it's
how do you
like-
write your stories?
Yeah, I keep thinking about, as you're talking, a different way to think of, I think, exactly what you're saying, which is, what is the problem that you are trying to solve? And this is how I think of it, just because I work directly with customers. They tell me they have problems. I have to think of in the vein of, I'm solving a customer problem. And so that's kind of how the story comes about. I think for me is like, let me start with what kind of problem are we trying to solve for you?
Good. And what is the problem you're trying to solve? Sorry.
Mhm, mhm,
Define it,
mhm,
write it
mhm.
in standard terms, no legalese, and start there. And then where's it go? The backlog. Yeah,
Mhm.
Chris.
They'll usually have like one or two really big customers. They're a significant part of the
Thank you.
revenue stream. And so they will make demands that will be a pretty big deviation potentially from what the roadmap is. And it's kind of like, do we do this to satisfy this one customer? And they may actually be the only ones that even use this feature. And a lot of times it's, yeah, because we got a business if we don't satisfy it, but it's not always the thing that makes sense to do.
Very good point. And where does that come into? Your rules and your guidelines. There's some rules that are out there that may need to be bent, right? But you still stay within your guidelines. What are the problems? What are they trying to solve? What is the solution to that issue? And that solution must be in a story. And there's other terminology. I use the basic terminology for better understanding. You may call it other things. It could be called a requirement. It can be called other items. But that story, that definition must be written. And we must know the why of that problem. We must know the who, the what, and the why for every one of those. Who needs it? What do they need? Why do they need it? Well, where's the what? That goes to the Scrum team. Scrum team will tell you the what. I'm sorry. I said, I'm sorry. I messed that. You have to know the who, the what, and the why. The Scrum team does the how. How are we going to create that solution? That's the how. You must know who needs it, what do they need, why they need it, reason for it, and the how goes to the Scrum team to come up with a final solution through collaboration, working with the full team. Right? Feedback. Have you seen it before? Have you seen problems with this before? Any examples? I go through these and I just get so involved. Remember what place I'm in. Deliver the solutions frequently. We talked about that. Shortest time scale. Business people, your business teams, and who? Just developers? Just coders? No, who's your Scrum team? Say it again, please.
Everybody, you need to deliver the value.
Everyone's impacted by the story as you're creating the value at the end, right?
Well, yeah, everybody, you need to deliver the value. Like,
Everyone
that's
deliver
what
the
it-
value. Thank you. Right? Over here, more? Everyone on the team that's delivering the value. The delivery team, though, is the bottom line. It's not just coders. Are your users involved? They must be involved. They're not on the team. All right, you're right. They're not on the team, the Scrum team. But they must be involved.
they're not on the team. That's what I said.
I got it. But what she's saying is the users are not on the Scrum team. But is it okay to bring them in and let them talk all the time during the Scrum work? You can't let your users, your customers overwhelm the product while you're doing the sprint. How long is your sprint? A couple of weeks, maybe 1 week, maybe 3 weeks. Your customers are fully involved. Once the story is done and the work is being completed during the sprint, they can be involved, but you don't want them in there over. So the problem because you don't want we talk about dual coding. You want your users involved during the coding process, during the sprint. As soon as you accomplish something, you've got a field on a screen. They want to see it. Have your users involved. Let them see it. I know this is tough. People start talking about budgets and, well, we can't have a development environment and a test environment. It's tough, but you can still include those users in that process. Even if you don't have a separate environment, you can bring them down. You can invite them down. Let them see it, because they are the ones in the solution that you're creating, but they're not part of the delivery team, right? Any more points, your question? Work together daily throughout the project. Build projects around motivated individuals. How many here are motivated? Good. Why are you motivated? Why are you motivated, Chris? You're alive. That's good. We wake up in the morning. That's good. What makes you motivated? What motivates you on your Scrum team? What brings you to your stand-up, your daily stand-up? How are you motivated? You're sorry? The objectives motivate the Scrum. Common goals, common objectives. What that means is your stories that are created, that create that common objective, what you're going to bring forward to your daily stand-up, what you accomplished yesterday, what are you going to accomplish today, and do you have any impediments, right? Any problems, issues? Creating that success can motivate you on a day-to-day basis. When you wake up and you're going to that daily Scrum, what are you bringing to the Scrum meeting? What are you bringing to your daily stand-up? Completed work? Things that your user is happy about? Something your user, your customer, the people that are paying your paycheck are going to be happy about? Are they? How many here have a definition of done? Your DOD? Few of you? Good. Is the DOD definition of done required? Yes. How many of you don't think it is? Anybody here think you don't need a definition of done? A definition of done and definition of ready before it goes into a sprint are required. And everyone needs to know it. It needs to be posted. How do you create value without that definition of done? When can you test it? Every one of your acceptance criteria, those conditions of satisfaction must be satisfied and your user satisfied when it's completed, right? Most effective and efficient method of conveying information to and within development and our delivery team is face-to-face. How many of you work with remote users? Are you face-to-face? No? Okay. Sometimes you're not. Many times we're using a lot of Teams, a lot of Zoom. So we can still be face-to-face, even though we're not in the same physical room. But we must be able to collaborate. Must. Can we talk about our rules and our guidelines? Is that a rule or a guideline? The ability to collaborate and communicate is a rule. Can it be broken? Well, we're not in the same room. Maybe that's a break. But that collaboration, that communication must continue at all times. You must set guidelines to allow and promote that to occur. Working software, working solutions. What are you showing your end user? What are you showing your customer? Solutions, success, end results, criteria they can accept, right? Agile processes promote sustainable development or delivery. The sponsors, developers, delivery team, and users must be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. Do all of you do that? What does it mean? What does that mean? Constant pace indefinitely. Please, Chris. Don't get burnt out. It's your delivery. You know, I'm doing this right. So you keep it going. Please, microphone. Thank you.
The horse is actually capable of outputting about 20 horsepower, but that's not sustainable. The reason 1 horsepower is 1 horsepower is because a horse can do 1 horsepower all day long. So it's a sustainable pace.
Did you get that? 1 horse, 1 horsepower all day long. What if you put a 2 horsepower load on a 1 horsepower horse? That's what we're talking about here with a constant pace indefinitely, is that you're clear. It goes everything that's before that, communication and your collaboration, you know what you're doing. But how many times have you been into especially in your refinement meetings, say, oh, you don't need to write that down. Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. Has anybody heard that before? Have you heard that in meetings? Oh, I don't need to write that down. I know. Then what happens when it comes to testing? Can that be forgotten? Can that be missed? Can that be skipped? Again, we talk about rules can be bent, but you need some guidelines. We all need guidelines of what we do. We need it written down. We need that information to be clear and concise so that we can maintain that constant pace forward. Right? But 9 through 12, I'll go through quickly. We're running out of time, but I want to hear your questions, which you're going to be doing going forward. How we all do this. These are quick and easy. Very few changes at the last one. Continuous attention to technical excellence. But that also includes the technical excellence of your QA team, your DBAs, your systems analysts, your BAs, business analysts. Technical excellence. Make sure we're all giving credit. Simplicity. This is beautiful. The art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. That goes back to what we were talking about earlier, about that consistent pace and not putting that 3 or 4 horse onto a 1 horsepower machine. Best architectures, requirements, designs, self-organizing teams. Can you organize yourself? Can you help a team organize? That's what you have to build. Do you have a question or comment? Regular intervals. The team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. Is that behavior a set of guidelines? What's our behavior in that process to reflect back? How often do you have your retrospective? At the end of every sprint. It's not every week necessarily, every 2 weeks necessarily. When's your sprint end? Every sprint, every iteration, you have a retrospective. What worked? What did not work? Make sure you have guidelines. Make sure you have rules. What can be accepted? Put it in plain word. Define the rules and our guidelines. Our bottom line. What's the value? Comfort levels. Just like I talked earlier about my language and my accent. When I'm in Mississippi, I have an accent on my comfort level of speaking. When I'm here, when I'm in front of a room, I need to speak so that each of you can understand me. And if you don't, what do I want you to do? Let me know. You can't just get in the comfort level. Oh, he's comfortable speaking that way. No, if I'm not clear to you, I'm not doing my job. We got rules and guidelines. With an unconscious mind. How many times we just make a decision because of something we've heard in the past? Get into your retrospective. Well, that didn't work. Well, it kind of did. I know once before it did. There's a rumor it works. How many go by rumors? Sometimes that unconscious is something we may have picked up off of Facebook, but not something real for the company. Value streams, we mentioned that before. We talked about that here. A lot of you have mentioned it. What value are we providing? Our end user, our customer, where's that value? Accountability and responsibility. This is huge. Who on the team is accepting that accountability? Who's being responsible for in each and every one of those acceptance criteria? Each one to be a condition of satisfaction and testable, right? What are the rules? Do you, your team, company, or enterprise utilize a set of rules? If not, why not? Are they bendable? Can you break the rules? What are the guidelines? Same question. Oh, what above that? Anyone here have an acronym list? Does anybody here have company, enterprise with an acronym list? What's an acronym list? What does ABC stand for? Always by Colorado. I think it's one thing it stands for. But that's just a guideline. What we want to do is make sure that we understand what we're all talking about. What are our guidelines? What are our principles? What are the values? Is everyone clear in your company what they are? If not, why not? What are your guidelines? What are your rules? What principles are you using to set your value? Oh, it sounds like a lot. Wow, that's a lot. Well, it is. What's your value in coming here tonight? Hope we've learned something. I know you've taught me something. You taught me a lot just listening to you. Hope you've learned from listening to others what we're doing here. And what can you do tomorrow to put this into action? Our rule. For the end of this meeting, there's one major rule. It's not bendable, but there are truly no foolish solution-oriented questions. You've got a question, everyone wants to hear it. What's our guideline? We're going to stop pointing at the issue and start asking about the solution. How many times have you been in conversations that keep talking about the problem? Where is the first step in that solution? Principle. The principle is whatever the problem, be part of that solution. Can we do that? Can we take that forward? Next Scrum meeting tomorrow morning? The value. I think you all know this very well. Scrum Alliance. Commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect. Respect for each other. Chris. Absolutely. He's saying, isn't it important to make sure you're solving the right problem? Communication and collaboration puts that right problem right on top. Thank you. Anyone else, please speak up. If you have a question or thought, please share. We said stop pointing at the issue. Well, the right issue, the understood issue. Did we say understood before? Make sure we're speaking in a language that we all understand, not legalese. We must understand that issue. That issue must be understood so we know it's the right one, and we can take it forward with what? A solution. My numbers, I've been in IT for quite a while. Back when we could play with our phone numbers, 303 Entrekin, yeah, that's me. 303 focused, you can reach me. 1877 focused, you can reach me. Let me know what your questions are, what you want to do, what you want to take forward. You're in the right, right organization right now. Take this forward, make it work, be right for you. Any final questions? Please, I'd love to hear from you. Did anyone pick up anything from this? Yes, please.
I want to know about your experience when you were having 20 or plus team members.
I'm sorry?
You gave the example that you had a 20 plus some team members in a one
okay.
team.
Right.
So how you handle that, like a Scrum I won't say principle or guideline is that 7 or plus or minus 2 team members should be there.
Thank you.
What is it your take on that one? Are you bending the, what is it you're bending the rules, or you are bending the guidelines? I want to know about.
Great question. She's asking, what was my position? Where was I when I had to take on a 20-something member team or Scrum team, still hold daily stand-ups, still hold reviews, still hold retrospectives? How did I do that? First thing that I had to do was that communication and collaboration within team. Everyone, look, we always scheduled our times for 30 minutes, even for my smaller teams, when I only have 3 to 5, I still scheduled 30 minutes to make sure we had time for what's called the parking lot. You know what a parking lot is? If you finish your 15 minutes, you want to talk about something, use that time at the end to talk about it. But I put the team under, well, I didn't either. I didn't put them under anything. I collaborated with the team. So they were all put under the perspective and knowledge and understanding that we only have so much time. So we had to help each other. If Johnny was too long today, Jandy wanted to say something. Susie too long the next day, Sammy wants to say something. We all worked together. We made sure that each of us understood that, can we take this to the parking lot?
Yeah.
Huge question. I love what you're saying. You've got a lot of good points. We don't have much time. And again, we were trying to do this in 15 to 20 minutes. I did take it to 20. So, but we've got to get this accomplished in this amount of time. How do we do that? Utilize the parking lot. If you're part of the solution in the parking lot, please stay on. If you don't feel you can help or not participating or not part of what you're doing, feel free to go ahead and hang up. But please help us. Great
Yes.
question.
Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
is exactly what I told in the interview, and people were freaked out.
Good luck and congratulations.
But they were stuck on the 7 plus or minus 2 size, and they cannot fathom that you can do it 20 team members. And
You're breaking all the rules. You're destroying all the guidelines.
yeah, I
right?
mean, but I was having the guardrails around it,
Mhm.
and working with the team and delivering the solution which brings the value to the customer. But they couldn't fathom it. They were like, no.
Congratulations on what you're doing. Well
Thank you.
thought out.
Thank
you. Good question. Any others? Any other points or ideas, concepts that you see that might bring forward? Right here in the front, if you don't mind, the speaker. Thank you. Microphone.
Interested in your thought on this idea. Rules must not be in conflict with other rules. At the other extreme, values often are in conflict with other values. What do you think about that thought?
That's a great question. He's talking about rules can't be in conflict with another rule. That's exactly right. But your rule has to be clear and has to be broken down into those guidelines, because the guidelines don't change. We've got the guidelines with our principles. We've got guidelines of what we know we have to do to create a solution, create a value. But you want to make sure that your rules are straight, clear, and understood. Are they still bendable? Can you still break a rule? Take it to the art room? Change the paint a little bit? Absolutely. But they cannot conflict. Thank you. That's very strong. It's not, it should not conflict. They cannot conflict. So when you develop a rule, it must be understood by everyone on the team. And when I say everyone on the team, are our customers also included? Yeah, it's a rule. We almost know it. We almost understand it, and we make sure they are not in conflict with one another. Does that mean there's not an exception once in a while? Exceptions are exactly that. 1 to 3%, work on the solution at that time, but go by those rules, make them clear, understandable, handle exceptions as they come, but don't put them as your priority. Okay, right? Good question. Thank you. Chris.
I'm struggling with this practice because my understanding is the principle can decide what you're going to do.
Your principles guide in handling the conflicts. That's about right. Your rules can be broken. You can't, the rules are there. but you realize that you're going to come across exceptions. There are going to be situations where they can't be followed, but your guidelines need to be followed. Your guidelines are your principles. Your principles, that strong belief that influences your actions. That's what you're going to be. And there you're going to stick with that. You're going to stick with. You must follow those guidelines to make sure that everyone's working in that same direction. And we're running out of time. Quickly, you must follow your guidelines because they are what drives your train, whether you're doing safe or not. But you must make sure those guidelines are followed. There are some changes to the rules. You want one over the other. They're not always wrong on either side, but you want to make sure that you're following the best rule. Thank you all so much. It's a pleasure being here. I've learned from you. Hope you've learned something from me. Let's stay in contact. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.